Good afternoon, all. On behalf of Applied Theatre India Foundation and ICCR, I welcome you all to this session of first ever virtual conference on role of applied theatre in Indian society. From yesterday, we all listening the role of applied theatre in various sectors. The work is possible when all going well and the practitioners or teachers are physically present there. But when the pandemic situation done and all work stopped, then that time, what was the role of applied theatre? Our speaker, Srividya, focuses on it. I am glad to welcome Srividya Srinivas from Bangalore. Srividya has completed her MA Applied Theatre from a Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, London in 2019. She has worked intensively with schools and has helped design curricula for work with children in schools as well as for training teachers to use drama as a pedagogical tool in their classrooms. Her experience is decisive and key in creating change. I request Srividya to present her thoughts on exploration of applied theatre in the online space during the pandemic. Over to you, Srividya.
Thank you very much, Vaishali. That was a really nice introduction. Thanks for that. I'll just share my screen 1 second. Okay. Human beings are social beings. We work and we think together. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced us into isolation, compelling us to rethink belonging and what community means to us. A community is a group of people who, 1 second, there's a glitch. Yeah. A community is a group of people who are considered as a unit because of their shared interests or backgrounds. They come together to find a sense of belonging. However, according to Peter Block, consultant and speaker in the area of community building, our communities are separated into silos. They are a collection of institutions and programs operating near one another, but not overlapping or touching. Therefore, our sense of belonging is in itself so fragmented that we are constantly searching for that belonging in all aspects of our lives. American educator Carol Lee Flinders defines a culture of belonging as one in which there is an intimate connection with the land to which one belongs. There's expressiveness, generosity, egalitarianism, mutuality, affinity for alternative modes of knowing, playfulness, inclusiveness, nonviolent conflict resolution, and openness to spirit. While Flinders talks of having a connection with land, she also speaks of other things such as mutuality and expressiveness, which are as important to feeling a sense of belonging as comfort and connection are. A sense of belonging and being a part of a community, therefore, fosters growth and a greater understanding of the self. India being a country of over 1.35 billion people, 28 states, 9 union territories, 22 scheduled castes, languages, different faiths, religion, and castes, our concept of community can be quite complex. Communities are formed based on religion, caste, language, and geography. Due to the large diaspora of people within the country, these communities are furthermore diverse. For the past decade now, we have existed in communities both in the online and in the offline space. However, this COVID era has pushed the boundaries of our understanding of community, thus creating a shift in our experience of belonging that is more symbolic than physical or geographical. British anthropologist Anthony Cohen says, community exists in the mind of its members. With this pandemic, now more than ever, we have a deeper craving to find belonging. Not surprisingly, Julie Wells, digital and social media expert, comments that the pandemic has leveled the playing field. We are all facing the anxiety, fear, and uncertainty together. The more we are physically apart, the more we crave to connect with our communities. But the internet has always given us greater reach. But for the first time, we are able to build global communities, making connections across the world and feeling a sense of belonging with people we have never met in person. Physical borders and distance are no longer limitations to belonging to a community. So through this presentation, I will be re-examining the idea of community through the COVID-19 pandemic in India, through the lens of AfterKara, the Applied Theatre Company's online drama club Mirror Mirror on the Wall. Here, we run online applied theatre workshops for children between the ages of 8 and 13 years. We explore themes and issues pertinent to them and what it means to grow up in the world today. Now, before I begin my investigation into how we see community and belonging in this COVID era, it is crucial for me to set the context. That is, looking at how children are experiencing and dealing with the pandemic in India. According to a journal article on COVID-19 and its impact on children in India, this pandemic has disrupted nearly every aspect of children's lives. Their health, development, learning, behavior, and their families' economic security, including protection from violence and abuse. Children and young people are constantly trying to get a better understanding of who they are and trying to belong, to be a part of a tribe. One such place they find that sense of being a part of a community is their school. However, due to the pandemic, schools in India shut on the 13th of March 2020. Children have been at home since, unable to meet their friends and feeling a sense of loneliness, not being able to go to school and learn with their peers. Not surprisingly, an NDTV article about the pandemic says that children don't have a fixed schedule. They have their parents around them all the time. It's important to add here that much of their fears also come from the adults they observe around them, adding to it for many a sense of uncertainty, loneliness, and even loss. With all this, children are becoming more and more vulnerable to mental health issues, with no easy access to support apart from their immediate families. They see their communities breaking down around them. Communities they used to be a part of, such as their after-school classes, their peer groups in school, or their tuition classes, no longer exist in the way that they have known before. With this breakdown of community, they are turning more to the online space, spending increasing amounts of time on social media and craving online entertainment. It's interesting to note that according to an Economic Times article dated June 2020, 54% of parents stated their kids are spending up to 5 additional hours on average online in front of a screen. That's a lot. And all this to find new spaces to gain a sense of belonging and community. On the other hand, there's a population of children who do not have basic access to good internet for online schooling, thus creating a bigger gap between the privileged and the underprivileged. For most children from the underserved communities, their schools were their safe space. This is where they were assured their daily needs, which may not be assured at home, thus shattering their space of community and belonging further. While this is definitely a growing concern, this is not something I will be focusing on today for my presentation. According to post-revolutionary Soviet psychologist Lev Vygotsky, all the higher functions originate as actual relationships between individuals. Therefore, according to his constructivist theory, learning, growth, and higher level thinking are most effective when done collaboratively rather than in isolation. Thus, children and young people, being resilient in nature, continue to rebuild and create communities during the pandemic as collaboration and play come very naturally to them. Helen Nicholson says that applied theatre is primarily concerned with developing new possibilities for everyday life. This is more important now than ever when we are faced with a pandemic, where, according to Mark K. Smith, editor of an education and community building blog, some children and young people feel that they have nothing to live for. The pandemic has brought with it a sense of grief, loss, and uncertainty, thus contributing to a loss of hope and increased vulnerability, especially for children and young people. In such circumstances, it is a basic human need to connect and belong and grieve as a community. Likewise, it was essential for us to re-establish human connections at a time we were all in isolation due to the pandemic. It is in this endeavor that we at AfterKara started our first online drama and storytelling workshops in an attempt to connect with children and young people. We then continued to experiment with tactile work, such as what you can see in the images here, where our participants are playing with shadow. They're making puppets and masks in the online space as a way to better understand our participants while having fun. As we continue to offer these workshops, a sizable number of participants continue to come back. One of our participants even told us during a workshop that this was a space that allowed him to forget the realities of the pandemic, thus giving him a sense of hope. This reiterated our belief that children needed a safe space to connect with one another in the wake of the pandemic. In the context of how viewers responded to the 9/11 tragedy, Bell Hooks talks of how grief created a context of vulnerability and rage where folks were eager to simplify everything to make a common enemy. This is definitely relevant to our experience during the pandemic. As an example, during our first set of workshops for Mirror Mirror on the Wall, our online drama club, we were exploring the emotions our young participants were experiencing during this lockdown. We realized there were a lot of extreme emotions such as rage, frustration, and increased boredom. During one of these sessions, we did a facilitator in role activity where our participants could hot seat the coronavirus and ask questions to help them make sense of these times. What we saw was our participants becoming aggressive towards their common enemy, the coronavirus, threatening to radiate and burn them alive. Then we had a moment of transformation and synchronization of thought. They collectively agreed that the coronavirus is here to stay and teach us a lesson in living life in harmony with nature. This was important to sign a peace agreement with the coronavirus, wherein so long as our participants do not bring harm to the environment, themselves, and the people around them, the coronavirus will not affect them. This moment of realization and transformation brought the participants together. It made them acknowledge they were not alone. This brought our participant and us facilitators together as well, knowing we were all sharing the same thoughts and fears. Brené Brown talks of how our tolerance towards vulnerability is reducing. And this vulnerability is at the core of fear, anxiety, and shame, and very difficult emotions we all experience. This pandemic has brought on an increase in fear and anxiety, thus making people more emotionally vulnerable, but also bringing us closer together, creating what I would like to call a community of hope. Hooks talks of hope being something that comes from a space of struggle, one where personal and social transformation is possible. It is this hope that brings a community of our participants together and keeps them coming back month after month in spite of workshops being online, a space they already feel overwhelmed by due to their online schooling. It was actually heartening to hear one of our participants during a workshop session telling us that our workshop was like a second home. Others say that they miss our workshops when we take a break. Our participants thus feel that this workshop is a constant positive in their lives, a place of possibilities, a sense of hope, and understanding that everyone is in this together. The photo that you see here are a collection of images from one of our workshops where we had asked our participants to draw a shield of emotion, showing the various emotions that they've been feeling during the lockdown. Hang on, another technical glitch. Yeah. Over the past 5 months of running Mirror Mirror on the Wall, we have seen our participants really learning to support one another. During 1 month, when exploring community and belonging, they created their own town that they chose to call AfterKara Town, paying close attention to everything that they needed to function as a community. Day one of this process resulted in them having a heated argument about how roads ruin the aesthetics of the town versus how roads are essential to go from one place to another. After taking the week to calm down, they thought about what was important to them and for their community. When they came back the next week, we saw that they started working together and felt a better sense of belonging to the town that they created. Here in this slide, you can see some of the reflections they did after the activity in the form of Twitter posts. This experience saw the beginnings of our participants navigating their way through working together collaboratively and thus creating their own community of hope within ours. I believe what we have created through our online drama club is what Smith calls a sanctuary. He defines it as spaces away from the pressures of daily life where children and young people are able to breathe and be themselves. In other words, a refuge or a place of safety. When they have been seeing constant change around them, our virtual workshop space has become a constant in their lives. The space is available to them when they need it. This space allows for vulnerability without judgment, allowing each individual to feel wanted and connected. Over the past months of working together, some who have never even met offline have created very meaningful relationships and now support each other both online in the workshop space and outside of the workshop space. However, Hooks also points out that one of the dangers we face in our education system is the loss of a feeling of community. Not just the loss of closeness among those with whom we work with and our students, but also a loss of a sense of connection and closeness with the world beyond the academy. While the stress of online schooling continues to increase, students are feeling a sense of disconnect, especially with everything happening in these small 4x3 boxes. They are no longer able to engage in hushed conversations with their friends as a teacher teaches, or convince their teachers to give them a free period so they can go to the field and play. This has led to a sense of dystopia. AfterKara's virtual workshop offers a community of hope in which our participants have something to look forward to and start to believe that they can move ahead despite the pandemic. Through dialogue and play, we encourage our participants to engage, act, and reflect on the various materials and provocations we bring into the space and find ways of collaboratively seeking answers. The co-intentionality of our work ensures participants have equal ownership or stake over our collaborative explorations. Moreover, each question or theme we bring into the space comes from our discussions with them and what they feel is important to them. This shared ownership of the direction in which our online drama club takes contributes to their sense of belonging and being the torchbearers of this community. While we continue to build and create new forms of community in order to deal with this pandemic, it is important to be mindful of the inherent abuse that may exist within these online communities. In her TED Talk, Rachel Harry says that over the course of the development of the human being, there evolves a desire to fit in, to belong. And this desire is so strong, we are willing to subjugate our own feelings, our own needs, our own thoughts, so we can conform. This need to belong and connect can manifest negatively in the form of exploiting the sense of community that has been created. Being in the online space gives young people an anonymity they lacked in the physical space, thus giving them the courage to offend their peers and facilitators without thinking about consequences. This unfortunately leads to a breakdown of the community due to lack of trust, care, and hope. While we have been seeing an increase in online vandalism due to social media, this new form of being together has seen children Zoom bombing classes. Poojan Sahil at Youth Ki Awaaz, an online youth platform that addresses social issues, defines Zoom bombing as people who are not supposed to be a part of a class or meeting, but enter it to cause disruptions. This creates immense anxiety in teachers about the safety of the online space. Children also find creative ways to slack on their work online. It has become so easy to switch their videos off or pretend that their internet is unstable. This, in my opinion, is a cry for help, a cry for attention. Sadly, with parents working from home, there is no longer a distinction between home and work. This means that children are no longer getting the same attention they may have received pre-COVID. Unfortunately, they're also unable to go out and play with their friends. Therefore, this lack of connections makes them crave individual attention. In an online classroom, where the teacher is already struggling to give their individual attention to every child as they could in the physical classroom, it makes a child act out by way of calling for this attention. This makes it all the more important that we find ways to sustain and nurture these communities of hope, spaces where children are able to play and be themselves while working towards understanding themselves and the world around them better, thus creating personal and social change. These communities of hope, therefore, provide children and young people a sanctuary where they can be themselves and through play gain a better understanding of how they can navigate this pandemic, thus empowering them to make healthy choices and giving them a space to make healthy connections. So, how can one ensure such communities of hope continue to sustain and be nurtured? Mirror, Mirror on the Wall will continue to function in the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, it becomes crucial that we as facilitators are mindful of the struggle and questions our participants come with, as well as the risks that come with it, working with children and young people in the virtual space. It becomes imperative that we are able to effectively create a container for our participants, ensuring they feel supported. In order to sustain a community such as this, it is important to partner with our key stakeholders, such as parents or immediate caregivers, thus putting onus on them to help sustain and nurture this community. especially while our work is limited to the screen. We ensure that every decision involving the child and the classes are taken after consultation with the parents. There have been sessions where the work we have done has pushed our participants into spaces of discomfort. After all, it is in such spaces that transformation takes place. It then becomes our responsibility to apprise parents about the situation and ensure they facilitate a healthy dialogue at home to support our work. This has definitely made a difference in the way both parents and children have responded. There's faith and trust, which only further helps in nurturing and growing our community. Who better to help nurture and sustain our community than our own participants, another key stakeholder? It is therefore imperative to put the onus on them to help grow this community. To do this, we ensure our participants feel their voices are heard by taking inspirations from our conversation with them to give shape to our workshops. For example, during a discussion around gender discrimination and stereotyping, a male participant felt that most discussions around gender were highly female centric and wanted to know why voices of men were not heard. Very valid question. So my co-facilitator and I decided we needed to go and find a story that explored gender from a male perspective. We managed to find one, and he was immediately engaged in that session. This is one of the ways in which we ensure our participants are constantly engaged and always feel validated. To conclude, it is our responsibility as applied theatre facilitators to nurture and grow this community and ensure our participants actively engage and help us sustain this community. For this, we must continue to ensure our work with children remains co-intentional, thus ensuring both facilitators and participants have a shared agency to take the workshop in the direction that is most beneficial to all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Srividya, for presenting this session and sharing your research knowledge and time with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for connecting with us. Now we'll have a short break and we'll be back at 4 p.m. with speaker Vaibhav Lokur from Sonare.